Hi, everybody. You are tuning in to a Facebook Live broadcast of RADIOLEX, the voice of the people. And today I am joined by Richard Young, Director of Civic Lex. I am also joined by Brittany Rothmeyer. Is that the correct
You got it.
pronunciation?
That's right.
Executive Director of Fayette Alliance. And we are here to talk about Lex Vote and the upcoming Kentucky primary. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here.
Thanks for for having us on. I almost said for being with us, but thanks for having us on.
Both. It's social media. We're all everywhere at the same time. So for our folks tuning in, let's start with just the basic question. What is Lex Vote?
Sure. Should I go? Brittany, you want to go?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Lex Vote is a new initiative that was spearheaded by my organization, Civic Lex, and Brittany's organization, Fayette Alliance. And we both of our organizations have a history with voter engagement and particularly voter education, helping folks understand who's running for office, particularly local office. And so we put together a coalition of 10 other organizations to create a voter resource that will help people understand what's happening locally with the elections and where candidates stand on the issues.
Well, and I've interviewed a couple of the local and state candidates, and it is a very bizarre election season with COVID-19. Everything is so up in the air and strange, and so Kentuckians are being asked to do something very different than what they're used to. I think it's going to really surprise people that they're not going to get the results on the day of the election, but it's going to, the deadline for the election, but it's going to take about a week. So you mentioned both your organizations kind of got this rolling. I know RADIOLEX is a media sponsor. We're behind this effort. Who else is involved?
Sure. So I can dive into this a little bit. So as Richard mentioned, Civic Lex and Fayette Alliance have both done voter education and candidate questionnaires and things like that. And so when we were talking about 2020, it is, like you said, obviously such a unique year in light of COVID-19. People, being encouraged by our leadership to vote from home, and we decided that it was so important to really focus on community partnerships this year. And that there were really, even though we're all, different organizations with different priority areas, different ideologies, different ways that we approach issues, we thought that coming together as community leaders and community organizations to really talk about what we had in common and what Lexington, the issues that we're facing in Lexington, those are things that we all have in common. And so as we started this, we wanted to get as many different organizations involved as we could. And so those organizations are Commerce Lexington, Fayette County Farm Bureau, Fayette County Neighborhood Council, WUKY, the Lexington Herald Leader, RADIOLEX, the League of Women Voters. Who am I missing?
Oh man, Smiley Pete Publishing, Lexington
Smiley
Forum,
Pete?
WUKY. Did you say the Community Land Trust?
No.
And Lexington Community Land Trust.
Perfect.
Well, and it's a lot of people getting together because voting is such an important thing that we can do. And I think there is a little trepidation among folks about how is this going to play out. I've heard people who are very suspicious of mail-in ballots and that sort of thing. And so I think doing voter education this time around is more important than ever. What are the objectives of what you're trying to accomplish? Sort of what's the going on?
Yeah, I think that for us, really the key is helping folks understand who's on the ballot and when the ballot deadline is, how to vote, like that, those very essential things, right? It's very confusing. And this is the first time we've been asked to vote like this. There are states all across the country that already vote like this in every election. But we have the opportunity to do this now. So really, that's like kind of the biggest thing for us, is just helping people understand how to vote, when to vote, and what's on the ballot. And so, I think a sort of secondary goal is helping people understand the sort of role that the council plays in Lexington's sort of how things happen here. And, you know, there are only 2 council races that have a primary in June. The other ones didn't have more than 2 candidates. So it's really helping folks understand where those candidates stand on all of the issues impacting our city, all of, you know, the serious major issues. And then, you know, what their role would be in, if, you know, where they, depending on where they stand on those issues, what would their role be in sort of policy decisions in Lexington's future.
And I think, you know, something that Richard and I have talked about a lot in this work is, there are so many people statistically that don't vote in city council races that vote on so many of the other races. And so for us, we thought it was so important to emphasize that local leaders, specifically our city council people, really the decisions that they make and the policies that they vote on and make decisions on really shape our community, are in the most immediate ways, the way that we live our everyday lives, from, you know, the trash pickup, recycling, to planning and zoning, to economic development, all of these things that really shape how we operate in our city, and you know, going to work and anything like that are just really shaped by these local leaders. And we want people to understand how they're shaped that way, why, and how they can be more informed when they're making those decisions.
And
Yeah.
RADIOLEX is particularly interested in this because one of the seats open is the 3rd district seat, which is right in the heart of our listening area. So a lot of our volunteers and our listeners are really directly impacted. So that is important. And I know that part of what Civic Lex has done in this process is to create an amazing sort of tool to help folks navigate this. Richard, do you want to talk about that? Do some show and tell?
Yeah, so Civic Lex and Fate Alliance have worked together to kind of build the sort of infrastructure behind this whole process. And a big part of that is a separate website that people can go to understand this information. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with everyone right now. So you can find the Lex Vote website at lex.vote. You don't have to enter a .com or .org or anything like that. It's just lex.vote. And it's easy as it gets.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so basically from this website, there are a lot of different things you can do, but we try and focus on 3 very clear things. So the first thing that you can do is find out how to vote. That's really, really important. So if you just go to this how to vote section, we've adapted this really wonderful guide that Dan DeRocher wrote in the Herald Leader, along with some sort of new information that keeps coming out because it is coming out by the day. There's actually a press conference today that the mayor held on some dates and stuff related to the absentee voting. So really it just kind of walks you through the basic steps. Request it, fill it out, and turn it in. The really big thing is that voting in person, you know, that's really a last resort this year. There's only going to be 1 polling location in all of Fayette County. That's going to be Kroger Field. And, you know, it's going to be the county clerk in this press conference today said it's going to be a pretty miserable experience. So don't do it if you don't have to. The second thing that you can do is you can see who's on your ballot and where they stand. So all you have to do that is just put in an address. I'm going to put in our office address. Oh wait, sorry, that's not where I put it. I'll put it there. So you just put in your email, your first, last name. You don't have to do those. You could just do it based on the address. Oh, hold on, I didn't do it right. East Main Street, Lexington. I did. You know, this is like a common thing that happens anytime I try and demonstrate a piece of technology, is it stops working at that exact moment, or I do it wrong. So I'm going to try this again. 141 East Main Street. You know, it would help if I put the city in, wouldn't it? So then you just select your address, and you get started, and it will take you to this external website that we're partnering with a company called Civic Engine on. And from here, you can choose your ballot. So it will show races all the way to the top, but I'll just select nonpartisan, which is only the council race. And so it will pull this up, and it will have information about all of the local candidates, running for that office. So we have, the 4 running in this election, and it has their answers to this questionnaire that we sent out. But if you're voting, on either the Democratic or Republican ticket, you can also see where candidates for, state house, state rep, national representatives, Senate, and president all stand on the issues in your party. So it's a really, really great service that we're really excited to do it. You can also add people to your ballot, and then this app will actually remind you when to vote. So it'll send you like a reminder and be like, hey, it's time. You got to send in your absentee ballot by the 23rd.
And Richard, let me interrupt you just for a second, because I don't know that we clearly stated it before. So talk about the interview, the survey that was sent out. So because our people might not know what that is.
Brittany, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And if you want to go to About on the page there, or to the, just to kind of brief everybody. So as we gathered this coalition of organizations, we wanted to really intentionally come together and draft this questionnaire together. So again, like I said, we all of these organizations have different priorities and different missions, but we thought that we could come together and not only decide what the biggest issues, challenges, opportunities for Lexington actually were, and then we wanted to write the questions together. So it was an experiment. It was 11 hours of writing these questions together over Zoom meetings, which I can say really was it was a great experience. I mean, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about each other, about where organizations stand on these issues, and we came up with 11 different questions in 11 different areas. And so on the About section on the website, you can just learn a little bit about how we created this questionnaire together. Again, it was a lot of work, but it turned out really well. We're really, really pleased with the outcome. And then you can see the responses on the District 3 section and the District 9 section. So you can see not only their contact information, but you can see here all of the categories that we identified as the biggest issues as a group facing our city. And then you can see the questions and answers, on each of those. So this really gives so much insight into, what these candidates' visions are for Lexington, how we're going to move into the future, how we're going to grow and change. And it's also, I think, important to note that even if you don't live or are not voting in the 3rd or 9th district, these council people, while they represent your district, they also work together with the rest of the council to make determinations about how our city operates. And so understanding each of these candidates' positions on these issues, even if they're not particularly in your district, gives you a better overall understanding of the decisions that our city makes and where those come from. So we encourage everyone to take a look at all of these questions and answers. Richard did a wonderful job in creating this website to make it as easy to read as possible. And I think that they're very insightful answers, and they tell us a lot about the candidates and how they see our city.
Great. And so again, for people who would like to use this resource, it is lex.vote. That's it. It's very simple. You don't need anything else, just lex.vote. And I want to make sure that we say it 2 or 3 times, very much reinforce the dates, because since this is a different kind of primary situation, making sure you've got the dates is important. And another thing that I've heard anecdotally from folks is, I think some people are not aware that you can request a ballot by phone. So that number is on the Civic Lex, the
Lex Vote website. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are a couple things to understand about this election. It's really, really different. So you have to request an absentee ballot to essentially vote not at Kroger Field on election day. So that has to be done by the 15th, June 15th. And the best way to do that is to go to govoteky.com or .org. You can do it by phone by calling the county clerk's office, but what happens is it does take a little bit of a different process. So what happens if you call the county clerk's office is they have to go through the traditional absentee balloting process. So they actually will mail you an application that you have to fill out for an absentee ballot and then send it back, and then they'll send you your absentee ballot. So that process is really lengthy. Going directly to the Kentucky Secretary of State's website at govoteky.org cuts around all of that process. So that's a really important thing to understand. Now, once you have your absentee ballot, it's pretty simple to fill out. You just open it. There'll be a number of different envelopes in there. You fill out, who you want to vote for in the primary, and then you have to sign. You have to sign it. You have to put it in an envelope. Then you have to sign that envelope. Then you have to put that envelope inside another envelope, and then you have to sign that. So it's really important, because at any point in those, if one of those things does not have a signature on it, your ballot won't be counted. So that's really, really important. And make sure that you're signing consistently from an envelope to envelope, because if those don't match, or if it doesn't match with what the Secretary of State has on file for you as your signature when you vote, that won't count. So it's really important to get all of those steps correct. Now, you have to send the ballot back before June 23rd. It can be postmarked all the way up till June 23rd. And even if you send it on June 22nd and it's postmarked on the 23rd, it's okay. It just has to get there by June 30th, but it has to be postmarked by June 23rd. And then on June 30th, the Fayette County Clerk will announce the results from Fayette County's elections. And it might happen differently in other parts of the state. It's up to each individual county clerk for how they announce. So some might announce what they've gotten for that day, but in Fayette County specifically, we are waiting until all the ballots are in and counted on June 30th to announce. But you have to have it in by the 23rd. So the 15th and the 23rd, those are the 2 dates to remember: June 15th, June 23rd. Now, there's more information. Now, all of this is on the Lex Vote website, so lex.vote. So if you don't get your absentee ballot in, you can vote in person on Kroger Field, at Kroger Field on June 23rd from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. All of the social distancing measures will be in place. There's free parking in the stadium parking lot, and you'll go into Kroger Field, otherwise known as Commonwealth Stadium. Kroger will get mad at me for saying that. And you'll go in there and you'll vote. You can vote in person, but it's going to take a while. They announced today that they're going to try and form the line so they're all under the roof, but that might not be the case. So you may be standing in the sun or in the rain on election day if you don't vote absentee. Now, one other thing that you can do, if you have any physical disabilities, or if you are sick or have any pre-existing sort of conditions that put you at increased risk for COVID-19, you do have the ability to vote early in person by making an appointment at the Fayette County Clerk's office, at which point you can then go at your scheduled appointment time to the Lexington Senior Center to vote. They're really trying to hold those early voting times for people that do have issues that it would make it very difficult to vote in person in a safe way. So the best way to do it is absentee. Then if you have to vote in person, you'll know that you'll be voting on election day in not the best conditions. And if you have a disability or some sort of illness, you can vote in person early at the senior center, but you have to make an appointment. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But
So,
it's all on the Lex Vote website.
let's just run down that again.
Yes.
To be clear. So you have to request your ballot to vote before June 15th, which is a week from yesterday. It's next Tuesday. That's when you have to have made your request.
At govoteky.com.
Govoteky.com. And this has been a concern of folks, is if people don't have access to the internet or they don't have access to technology, you can call to request a ballot, but it's going to be a little more involved process. So do not wait around to do that, because there's back and forth that has to happen. Because
on any of this, do not wait around.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
So June 15th is the drop dead to request the ballot. Then everything's got to be back June 23rd. That's when you have to mail your ballot back in. That's all that stuff. It has to be postmarked or by June 23rd. that's
Yes.
happens. And then depending on where you live, the election results will be announced whenever they do that. Here
Yes.
in Fayette County, it'll be on the 30th.
Yes.
So again, if you want to know more about this, where should you go? What website, class?
You should go to lex.vote. Yeah.
Lex.vote.
Lex.vote. Yes.
lex.vote.
And there are links there to where you can request a ballot. So if you go there, you can get
Correct.
to other places and you can find the phone number. So that's really a go-to resource. It's so easy to remember, lex.vote. So before we wrap up, are there any sort of parting shots, any things you want to say to our folks who are tuning in? I mean, voting's obviously a huge part of our system, and you know, now is we have to kind of jump through a hurdle to be able to do it, but it's important. So what are your all's thoughts?
I mean, you know, I think you said it well. I think voting is one of the most important rights that we have, and exercising it this year, even in these unique and difficult circumstances, is really more important than ever. And so I would just say we created this, like you said, as a comprehensive resource to help you in the easiest way possible make an informed vote. So we encourage you to request your absentee ballot or make arrangements for voting as soon as possible. Educate yourself on the candidates and make your voice heard. And Lex.vote explains the best way to do that and the easiest way that we could figure out how to put it out there. And we hope that it can be a great help to people in exercising this great right that we have as citizens.
Richard?
Yeah, I echo everything that Brittany just said. I mean, this is, local elections really, really matter. And, a lot of us, I think, it's easy to get really disillusioned with politics and get disillusioned thinking that, your vote doesn't matter. But it really does, right? We had an election in Kentucky last year that was decided by one vote. And so every single vote really, really does matter. Turnout for Kentucky primary elections is notoriously low. But, in 2018, in the general election, only less than a third of Fayette County voters voted for council. Less than a third of registered Fayette County voters voted for council. So if you don't like the people that are on council, they were elected by less than half, right, of the city, less than a third.
Well, and I think that's such an important thing for people to remember when you talk about that is who is choosing your government for you. If you're not voting yourself, it is maybe 10% of the people, maybe 20% of. I mean, Sophie, the mascot here,
is a cattail. I saw a cattail coming into
the
yeah, she's
really great.
she's in the studio helping out.
The benefit of being at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's. People always, or a lot of times people sort of like, well, what happened? And it's, the people who showed up made their decisions, and that's how it went.
And if I could make one more point, I think,
sure.
Absentee voting is, it's going to be really interesting to see how this turns out this year. And, if we have higher turnout than we have in previous primaries, I think there'll be a really good argument to keeping around the sort of vote by home process. To anyone that's tried it, the sort of rollout has been a little bit tricky, and explaining it's been really tricky, but the actual process of voting is really, really simple. And it puts a lot less people at risk in this time, but it also has the potential to allow a lot more people to vote. If you look at states that have adopted wide vote by home policies, that are better than ours, admittedly, but are similar, like Colorado is a really great example, where they have universal vote by mail. It significantly increases turnout because there's so many of us that don't have time maybe on that day to go to polling places. So it's really important to participate in the absentee ballot part of this, because if you do the vote in person, yes, I know that's how we've voted forever, but if we can show our government that, hey, showing up by voting absentee by mail is going to make a lot more people vote, there's a chance that this will stick around. We have to create the popular demand to keep this program here after the coronavirus crisis is over, because it is objectively an easier process for people. So
Well, and
I would just really encourage people to vote by mail.
I will chime in there because we've actually, on our Facebook page, social media, we've gotten a lot of pushback from folks saying that mail-in voting is much more likely to be corrupt or to be tampered with and that sort of thing. So doing our due diligence, I did research on behalf of the station, and numerous political organizations on both sides, election officials, research institutions. There is absolutely no evidence to support that there's any more likelihood of fraud in mail-in voting than voting at a poll. So that's completely myth. I mean, there's nothing factual there at all.
In fact, the voter fraud as a concept is very limited, right? There's rarely actually been people tampering with the vote in any sort of significant and statistically significant way. But I will say that vote by mail is safer than voting in person for the sort of trustworthiness of the vote. There are multiple stages and multiple checkpoints to ensure that this vote is secure, right? You have to be at an address. It's tied to your address. It has a scannable thing on it, so that the postal office scans every time it goes somewhere. So the state of Kentucky, the Secretary of State, can actually track every single ballot going to every single person in the state of Kentucky. It has to have multiple signatures that all match your historic signatures. There are, if the envelope comes unsealed while it's in the mail, it does not count. If the sort of internal envelope that has sort of a tear off portion, if that portion is torn off, it does not count. So making sure that you're doing it the right way will ensure that your vote's counted, but rest assured that it would be impossible for there to be a statistically significant level of fraud with mail-in balloting. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, I am so grateful for both of you for being here today to go through this with us all. Brittany, do you have any last words you'd like to say? Because Richard and I have been talking a bunch.
And I'm glad you did. It's really, really important, and we appreciate you having us on. It's been a joy for us at Beta Alliance to work with CivicLex, and we're really grateful to all the organizations like RADIOLEX that have joined in this effort in really trying to broadcast the importance of voting and doing it in an educated way, in a safe way. So thank you for your participation and for having us on today, and we really look forward to continuing to get the word out about this initiative.
Great. Well, thank you all. Have a good rest of your afternoon. And we'll be broadcasting this on WLXU 93.9 as well a couple of times in the coming days. So awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Bye.